Hello, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Emmy the Cat Lady, and you join me. We're back in the Capital Wasteland at a somewhat scenic overlook. So I thought it would be fun to visit a couple of campgrounds that are in the Capital Wasteland, because if we're going to be tourists, then you're going to need somewhere to stay, somewhere to put your head down and all that kind of thing. So let's have a look at some of the campgrounds. There is a slight rad scorpion infestation, but we're not too worried about that. So this one here is the Mount Mabel campground. This is part of it. So there's some little caravans and things. I think we can get into this one. Yep, we've got a swing set with a little teddy bear on it, which, as we know, often indicates this is where a child died, potentially. So it's quite a good view up here, Mount Mabel campground. You know, we're kind of looking right over the river, and then there's more mountains and hills in the background and stuff. So as to where this location is on the map, so we're kind of in the west here, so just to the southwest of the Dickerson Tabernacle Chapel, and to the southeast of the Deathclaw Sanctuary. So the Deathclaw Sanctuary is quite nearby, as well as one of the broadcast towers too. But some raiders have been here. Obviously this person has been gone for quite a long time, but raiders have set up here, so there is some ammo boxes and first aid boxes and things to find. So this one's not the most exciting, but it does have, you know, a really interesting view. And there is also a reference to it in the game Fallout Shelter Online, that is a side game that was mainly released in China, I believe. And there is an English version available, but it's not official, and it's kind of sits in a weird place where it might be canon, might not be canon. But in that game there is a Deathclaw that is called the Mount Mabel Monster, and it lives here at this campground, which is kind of interesting because we are quite close to, you know, the Deathclaw Sanctuary, so it would be kind of interesting to think that a Deathclaw moved in. But yeah, there's a few random bits to look, but there's not really any skill books or anything like that here, so this one's potentially the kind of least exciting, but there is an interesting fact about that Mount Mabel Monster Deathclaw, which is interesting. But we do have a couple more to visit at marker for it. So we're going to the F. Scott Key Trail and Campground, which has Deathclaw as well. And it turns out, and then this person who's not a Deathclaw, not dangerous, combat's turned off, so that's why this guy's still alive. But yeah, this person isn't. But yeah, so this one is quite close to the Dunwich building, so we are right at the southwest corner of the map here. And there does tend to be quite a menagerie of enemies in this location. So I say we've got the one Wastelander, and normally if you're playing normally without console commands and stuff, this guy's usually dead when you get here, probably because there's Deathclaw. But there is some fun things to be found, so I'm just gonna take the Deathclaw down, because otherwise I'll not be allowed to fast travel away once we're finished here. But Deathclaw is relevant to one of the things that we are looking for in this location. So put the light on so we can see. Okay, not this one. But yeah, you can see it's been set up like a campsite. You know, we've got plates and bowls and empty cans, grills. Well, I would call them barbecue, but other people call them, you know, depending on which part of the world you're in. Hunt around. First aid box. Scenic overlook, which is nice. There's Dunwich. It's possible I've picked it up already and not realised. There's Bear, Bear is friend. Yeah, because this is the only intact camper I can see. So, yeah. It's entirely possible that I've already picked it up and not realised that I've done that. But yeah, basically this location, we've got the Wastelander who usually is dead when you find him. Inside the camper, there is a copy of the Deathclaw Gauntlet schematic. So one of the things about the schematics for the weapons you can craft in this game is that while you can buy them from the different merchants, there is also a copy that is located somewhere out in the wild that you can find as well, and this is the location of one of them. There is also a duck and cover skill book that's supposed to be here, which again, it's entirely possible that I have already collected that one, because this location was one that I'd been to, so possibly I have already collected it. And it is on one of these picnic tables, I think this one. Have I not collected that? Oh no, there it is, there it is. Yeah, so there's a duck and cover here as well. And you can find albino rad scorpions in this area if you have broken steel installed and you're a high enough level, then the big bads can show up here too. So bear that in mind if you're travelling in this area. And the name of the location is the F. Scott Key Trail and Campground. So it is named after Francis Scott Key, who wrote the Star Spangled Banner, which is obviously the national anthem of the United States. So little nod to him. I mean, there's a lot of people, a lot of places in this area that are named after important people in American history. Kind of makes sense. And then the final one is quite a bit up to the north. So we need to find, where are we? Little lamplight. There it is, that's the place we want, the Everglow National Campground. So now I should be able to fast travel. Yeah? Yeah, there we go. That, funnily enough, seems to happen. That's the one that has the thingy on it. The device, the control device on it. For some reason, every time I fast travel to Little Lamplight, it shows up and then drops dead, which is nice. Anyway. So that's just a protect. I don't think we care too much about you. A bunch of super mutants up here. Right. Are we close to the place? Yeah, we're close to the place. Here we are. So, yep, this is the final campground. It is a super mutant stronghold. There is an ongoing battle for superiority in this area between the super mutants and the raiders. So normally when you arrive here, they are fighting each other and it's a battleground. Obviously combat's turned off in this, so they're just kind of standing there glaring at each other instead. But it does mean that there's quite a few bits and pieces of loot in this location, which is worth finding. So yeah. First of all, if you're collecting sugar bombs for the ghoul that makes the Ultrajet, then there is a total of 11 boxes to be found here, which is quite handy, as well as a bunch of ammo boxes, roller skates, and things. But I did spot it here. There is also a copy of Guns and Bullets in here. And when you go into the trailer, I believe it does trigger more enemies to appear. But if you're looking for sugar bombs, it's a good place to come to. Deal with these guys. Bye. And you. So satisfying. But yeah, you've got your usual stuff as well. There's like ammo boxes and stuff, and obviously whatever you can take off the dead. But you can see that they've been trying to make themselves right at home here. There's another little camper down here. So this is the Everglow National Campground, so presumably as part of like a national park kind of place. Another thing that can happen when you arrive here, obviously you've got the battle between the raiders and the super mutants, but the Enclave can show up and join the fray as well. If you've done the Waters of Life, they'll turn up and get involved. So you can just sit back and, you know, watch the carnage happen and then pick off whoever's left at the end of it. That's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. But there is also a little thing to the east of here, so we're looking for a billboard about a bowling alley and a crash truck. East, so presumably it's going to be on the road or just off the road somewhere. Looks like a billboard. That's a bus. Okay. It is, yeah, so when you pass the billboard there and come down off the road to this crash truck that has a load of barrels, and there is a Nuka-Cola Quantum here, so if you're doing the Nuka-Cola challenge, there's one there, and that's quite close by to the campgrounds, so yeah, it's good to see them factoring in things like that, because obviously we've got office buildings, and then obviously there's the big ones like the White House and the Washington Monument and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, people lived here before the bombs. People went on holiday, went and camped places and travelled. That was definitely a thing. So it's good to see that kind of being factored in. And then obviously people have found these campsites to be potentially useful locations to set up shop and set up their own little community, their own little camp. Even though they are fighting each other for territory, but that's basically the whole of the wasteland, is different factions fighting each other over territory. So yeah, fun little whistle-stop tour of the kind of campgrounds that are in the Capital Wasteland. There's quite a few more that I really like in Fallout New Vegas as well, so we'll probably cover them at some point. But, you know, a few useful wee rewards, and that's one of the things. You've got all these little locations across the Capital Wasteland that no quests really send you to. You just kind of stumble across them, but, you know, if you're looking for skill books or if you're collecting things, you know, there's so many of these kind of fetch quests, the repeatable ones where people are going to pay you for finding certain things like the sugar bombs and the blood packs and pre-war books, all that stuff. So, you know, known locations where you can, you know, find 11 boxes of sugar bombs, that's worth quite a bit in terms of caps for you, which is something that you're probably going to want in this game because the economy is very, very different. You know, making money in Fallout 3 is a lot more difficult. because there just isn't as much money around. Whereas you compare that to New Vegas, where you've got functioning casinos and things, so there is more of an economy there. People have caps, they have currency to spend more, and there's more opportunities to make money. Obviously, being a professional gambler carries certain risks and things, but it's still something that's feasible in that game. Whereas here, you don't really have a lot of options, other than doing these things, finding stuff for people, or you just kill everybody and then find their stuff. That's a valid choice as well. Morally questionable, but you do what you have to do when you're in a desperate situation. That's just the way it goes. But yeah, it's cool to see all these campgrounds. Oh, hello. Where'd you guys come from? You weren't here a minute ago. Yeah, that's a thing, I think, where you kill them all and then you go into the trailer and then more super mutants and stuff spawn in, which is kind of fun as well. So you have occasional things like that, I think, where it's a sneaky little trap and you go into a place and then it automatically triggers new enemies to appear to give you a fright. So there you go. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Interesting little bits of kind of history and just a bit more insight into how people lived their lives before the apocalypse happened and how we can maybe make use of that now in order to improve survival a little bit. These campers they're not the best, but they still at least provide some degree of shelter to people. These raiders obviously want that. It's going to shield you from the worst of the elements. Not going to protect you from the Tesla cannon, though. Here's the angry red over there, and more raiders. Yeah. A little bit of a war zone, this location, under normal circumstances. But, yeah. And I think it's still a game that looks good. You see all the wee signs all over the place saying, look, scenic overlook here. But, there is something to be said for the scenery in some parts of this game, which I do still really enjoy. It's aged a bit, but, I still think it's a fascinating map to explore, and there's plenty more locations to find yet. I'm on a mission to dig up all the kind of interesting ones and find all the skill books and other useful bits and pieces that we can come across. So hopefully you come back for more of that on Tuesday, and Saturday we're getting into the food chain and the food web of the Commonwealth. So that's going to be very, very interesting. And then after that, we're going to start picking up on the DLCs that take you to new map areas in all the games, because there's a few of them, and I think there's some very interesting things to talk about in that regard. So hopefully you're looking forward to that, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.